Welcome back to a special edition of Money Rocks. We now know the Imam behind the Ground Zero Mosque has landed in Bahrain for a State Department trip. We're divided about the mosque, and so are Muslims. Joining us now, Dr. Zuhdi Jasser joins us again from the American Islamic Forum for Democracy, and Ibrahim Raimi from the Muslim American Society for Freedom. Ibrahim, I want to start with you. Tell us what you think this trip is all about.
I think this trip is about representing Islam to the world in a way that's positive, in a way that shows the best of this country, in a way that demonstrates to people that the United States is a fair country and can certainly be a country that is able to create new sets of relationships with the Muslim world. Imam Faisal has done this before. My own organization has participated in briefings with people at the State Department and with guests coming from foreign countries under the auspices of the State Department. So there's nothing new in the nature of the trip at all.
Well, not that it's new. I'm just trying to figure out why the State Department has to sponsor the trip. I mean, aren't there organizations like yourself that would do a trip like this or sponsor a trip like this?
Well, the State Department, under not only this administration but previous administrations, has a number of religious and civic leaders that travel around the world representing American civil society to the world. And they include Jews and Christians and Muslims and people of other faiths and people of no faith. So it makes perfect sense, since Imam Faisal has done this before, for him to be included in this particular visit.
Fair enough. Okay, Dr. Jasser, do you think there's anything that we need to worry about this trip?
Yeah, I'll tell you, I think the whole premise of these trips is that somehow by presenting this a good relationship, that somehow having our enemies be our friend, and the State Department paradigm somehow works. And recent study out 3 or 4 weeks ago showed that we haven't budged the opinions in the Arab world with any of this time. And basically, I think having nonprofits do diplomat work just doesn't work. And I'll tell you, if he really was a reformist, he'd be asking to go to the Saudi prisons. He'd be asking to talk to dissidents and reformists. He'd be taking on the Wahhabis and Hamas and radical Islam and the Muslim Brotherhood. But he's not doing that. He's just going shaking hands, and I would call it the apologist meet the apologist tour. Mr.
Raimi, what about that? Why has Imam Rauf failed to, I don't know, call out the Muslim Brotherhood? Why has he failed to say, discredit Hamas?
I don't think his role is really to criticize the Muslim Brotherhood or Hamas. I mean, the State Department already does that. People like Mr. Jaffer already do that. His role is his role.
I'll tell you, his role, frankly, is to
Well, excuse me, please. I didn't cut you off. His role ought to be to represent in the United States of America what Islam is and the potential of Islam in this country. I think also that we can build different relationships with Muslim civil society, and that's really the point of
Mr. Raimi, hold on a second. Go ahead, doctor. Go ahead. Respond.
Well, I'll tell you, I think you're in denial, because we have a huge radicalization problem. There's nobody doing counter-radicalization, and if we're going to start the war of ideas, we had the busiest year in attacks against this country last year, and most of it is tied to organizations that receive money from abroad because of the ties of ideologies. That's where Awlaki came from and many others, and here you have a high-profile imam that's going to lift up his Rolodex, fill it up with new names, and it's going to be more monarchs, tribal leaders that are about digging their heels in political Islam, and not about separating mosque and state and reforming like we
Hang in there. We have two opposing views from the Muslim community, Curtis. Which one do you adhere to? Which one are you buying?
Well, I buy the fact that Bahrain is the perfect litmus test. 50% Shia, 50% Sunni, supporters of Hamas and Hezbollah, supporters of America. Our largest U.S. naval base in the Middle East is there. Imam Rauf could go there and confront the Muslim Brotherhood supporters, Hamas supporters, Hezbollah supporters, because it's a constitutional monarchy, and most importantly, there it is permitted, and he could do that.
Here,
but they're not producing.
Go ahead, sir.
They're not producing any new ideas to counter stoning, counter laws against apostasy, blasphemy.
What about it, Mr. Raimi? What about it? What about it? Doctor makes a good point. What about stoning? What about what about cutting your hand off if you get caught stealing something?
Well, I don't think that Imam Rauf has ever represented that point of view. He
hasn't come out against it either.
What is he doing?
And I don't think that his responsibility is to come out against it in the context of this trip.
All right, hold on.
Organizationally,
hold on, guys, hold on.
With all respect, Mr. Vini, why, I'm under nightmares from watching what I saw, a young 18-year-old girl get stoned. I'm not saying that all Muslims support it. But it's supposed to be the Constitution. The Sharia law is supposed to be the Constitution of the Quran. Where are the Muslims striking out against killing young girls like that, being stoned to death? Where is the Imam? Where are you?
Sharia law.
Right.
So, radical forms of Sharia law. Scary.
He also advocates the implementation of Sharia law. If you read his book that he wrote in
that's
2004, it's clear in there. So I don't expect him to get out on some kind of bully pulpit and say that he decries radical Muslims or jihadists. I don't expect that because I already know what he believes and what he stands in. Look at his 60 Minutes interview as well.
Does it bother you that this Imam hasn't come out against these types of things? That he hasn't said, I'm a moderate and I'm against all these forms of torture or punishment, whatever you want to call it.
If he does, you could put him right on the list there with Salman Rushdie, right? I mean, he's going to be on the hit list, and he's going to be #1 on the hit list.
That's not true.
Go ahead, Ibrahim.
I'm just saying, I'm not so sure that what he's doing right now is that bad, but I will tell you this. It's a way of reaching out, I think.
Go ahead, Ibrahim.
We can't
I met this man in Melbourne, Australia.
Doctor, hold on one second. Doctor, go ahead, Ibrahim.
Yeah. I met this man in Melbourne, Australia this year. I'm talking about Imam Faisal Abdul-Rauf. I read his book, What's Right with America is What's Right with Islam. The man is not a radical. He has represented American interests very, very capably. He is anything but a radical, and I think, frankly, he represents the mainstream.
Does he have any ties to Perdana, sir? Does he have any ties to Perdana at all?
To who?
He represents the mainstream of he represents the mainstream of political Islam, but he is not.
Right.
I read his book also, and I think he is living on a different planet if he thinks the Sharia is like the Declaration of Independence.
Right.
Many of our families left the Middle East to escape that nonsense, that theocracy, and I think actually it's more dangerous to put a facade on what really needs reform, and I think it is his role to lead that change.
Go ahead, Kim.
Exactly.
You can't deflect that and be in
Hang on,
denial.
guys. Hang on. Go ahead, Kim.
I agree with him 100%. And if you look even at the 60 Minutes interview where he called U.S. policies an accessory to the crime that happened, 9/11, in the most direct sense that Osama bin Laden was made in the
America.
USA.
Go ahead, Curtis.
How do you argue
made
with
in
that?
the USA,
Well,
Osama.
let's face it, we supported Osama bin Laden when he was a mujahideen fighting the Soviets. That's where he got his power from. We created the monster like Dr. Frankenstein, and now we got to chop the head off the monster in the rat hole somewhere where he's hiding out in Pakistan and Afghanistan.
That's why we have Curtis on. We love Curtis for that. All right, Dr. Jasser and Ibrahim Ramey, thank you guys very much. That was a great discussion.
Thank you.
All right, up next, I'm going to reveal the contents of my safe deposit box found buried in the Ground Zero rubble 2 years after the 9/11 attacks. Until today, I've never taken some of the items out of this box. You won't want to miss this one.